The coffee's kicking in. It's 11:45. That's okay, we got a late start today. All right. Hey everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. We are at my cabin. I will prove to you that you don't need cabinets to bake. You don't need appliances that are newer than 30 years old or a sink. Sink is still on 2x4s, so all you need is a working oven and a little workspace, and you can make Mondel bread, which we're gonna make today. This is a recipe called Mondel bread, and this is a family recipe. In my family, we spell it M-O-N-D-E-L and then bread, but that's, I don't know what to call it, like a, not like a transliteration, but it is a transliteration of Mandelbrot, which is German for almond bread. I liken it to Jewish Biscotti. It's a very crunchy, not too sweet, but really incredibly textured and delicious cookie. And this is a recipe that's been in my family for generations and everyone loves it. And it's so much better than you think it's gonna be based on the ingredients. So I'm gonna show you how to make it. I'm gonna make it in a stand mixer in terms of special equipment, but there's no reason why you couldn't make this by hand, and I've done that before. I just have my stand mixer out. You can also make it with a hand mixer. And that's really it as far as special equipment. We bake these in loaves that you freeform on a baking sheet, so you don't need like a pan or anything. Ingredients, they're very straightforward. So I have really the star ingredient, which are slivered almonds. Slivered almonds have these kind of like right angles. I actually really like baking with slivered almonds. They're very easy to find, and I love the texture that they create. So there's a lot of almonds in this recipe because that is the main flavor. All-purpose flour, 3 large eggs, 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, a cup plus a tablespoon vegetable oil, some kind of neutral oil, avocado, grapeseed are fine, baking powder, cinnamon, and vanilla. Oh, and salt. Let me give you a little background on this recipe. So as I said, it's a family recipe. We call it Aunt Rose's Mondel bread because my mother's Aunt Rose, I don't know if it's her recipe, but like that was who made it in her family. She was known for it. Although recently, my mom has been in touch with her cousin, and there's now slight dispute about recipe ownership, and maybe it's Aunt Tilly. Point is, it's a family recipe, and my mom has made this my whole life. My aunt makes it, and I learned while my mom and I were making this recipe together, because I wanted to make it with her so she could show me how she does it, that my great-grandfather, so my Aunt Rose's father, was a baker before emigrating to the US from what's now Ukraine. I had never heard that before. I was 33 before I learned that. So I love making it because I feel very connected to sort of my heritage. So it was actually very important to me that I didn't change anything about this recipe. That is basically like verbatim the recipe that was handed down to my mom. Of course, I made like 1 or 2 really tiny little changes, but for the most part, it is very faithful to the original. So that said, this recipe gets flavor from 2 main sources. One is almonds, and that is really the principal flavor, but the other is a very generous amount of very concentrated cinnamon sugar. So I'm gonna start by making that, mixing it. For the entire recipe, I have 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. I'm gonna take a 1/2 cup of that and mix it with the cinnamon. And this makes a very cinnamony cinnamon sugar. Generally, this is why I kind of said before, like, I would never make this recipe. Like, there's things about it that seem not wrong, but like I wouldn't do them. But it's perfect and I wouldn't change a thing. So there's like some lesson in there. So I'm just gonna mix this together. So you can see it's pretty dark. So it has a lot of cinnamon flavor. And just mix it until everything is a uniform color. Okay, and then set that aside. So the next thing is toasting your almonds. It's 2 cups of slivered almonds. Just lay them out on your baking sheet. Now the recipe, as the recipe says, first we're gonna coat the almonds in a little bit of oil. Again, if I were doing this, I'd be like, the almonds have plenty of fat in them, I wouldn't put oil on it, but this is what Aunt Rose's recipe says, so this is what we do. My mom has a thing of like, she has one pan that is like a rimless baking sheet that is, looks like something that was dug up at like an archaeological site, but to her, it's like her Mondel bread pan. It's like she can't make it unless she makes it on that pan. All right, so I'm just gonna stir this up, and the oven just beeped. So it's on 350. Although this oven is really on 375 because it's a little bit slow. Into the oven. And this will go for like 5 to 8 minutes. And I'll just check halfway through and toss them. And you want to go pretty dark on the almonds, like very deep golden brown, because again, that is the primary flavor of the cookie. Baking powder, 2 teaspoons, half teaspoon. Okay. So here I have 4 cups of all-purpose flour. So 2 teaspoons baking powder, not soda, powder. And then a half teaspoon of salt. So this is actually one of the changes. The original recipe does not have salt in it, but I could not help myself. It had to have salt added just to enhance all the flavors that are already in there. Stir that up. That's it. Now what I'm going to do is, separate from the 4 cups of flour that I have 1 tablespoon of flour here that I'm just going to sprinkle over the nuts.
What does that do?
And stir them around to coat. This is just part of the recipe. Doesn't seem necessary to me. I actually really like the idea of like, we make it this way because this is how we make it. It's kind of refreshing. Especially as a recipe developer where I'm always trying to like tweak and fix, and it's great to have something that is never changing. Okay, so I'm gonna let those cool and I'm gonna start to mix the batter. I'm gonna start with my eggs. I have 3 eggs. I'm gonna add my remaining sugar, which is 1 cup. And then 1 cup of neutral oil. It's very uncommon to see an oil-based cookie, but because this is a Jewish recipe, it is what's called parve, so it has no dairy, so that makes it like compatible with any meal with milk or meat or fish according to kosher rules. I don't know, I've never kept kosher, but that's what I'm told. So you could use like an olive oil. I actually did test it with olive oil because I was like, maybe I'll do like an olive oil version, but you don't really taste it. So to me, don't waste your really nice fancy olive oil on it. Just use a neutral oil. I'm gonna turn it on low. So once everything is smooth and homogeneous, so it's like you don't have any oil that's sitting on top or any unincorporated sugar or anything, it should look smooth and thickened. That's when you can add your vanilla. So 1 teaspoon. And then I'm gonna add my almonds, which are mostly cooled at this point. So the almonds go right into the mixer. And the paddle can kind of break them up a little bit, but that's fine. Again, like to me, this is a weird order to be adding the ingredients, but this is how we do it. So while it's mixing on low, I'm gonna add the flour mixture gradually, but there's not really a high risk of over mixing at all. So you can take your time on the flour. Just make sure it's all really even. Okay, so once all the flour is in, keep mixing until you have a pretty homogeneous dough. I always do the last little mix by hand, not because I'm trying to avoid overmixing, but because this is just a thick batter. So it's easier to kind of get down into the bottom and sides of the bowl with a spatula. Paddle's kind of done what the paddle can do. So you just want to make sure that everything is very evenly mixed and you don't have any pockets of flour or any kind of wetter areas where the flour didn't incorporate. Before we bake it, the recipe is very specific about chilling the dough uncovered for 4 hours. Now, I really pressed my mom about this because it just kind of didn't make sense. It's like the dough is easy to handle. Why does it need to be chilled uncovered? Why does it need to be exactly 4 hours? But that's just what the recipe says. And my mom swears that if you don't do that, they won't turn out, that the loaves will fall apart. I'm not convinced that that's true, but in the spirit of the recipe, we're just gonna do what it says. So I'm just gonna actually set this off to the side and then bring in the dough that I already made and it's chilled. I'm gonna make 3 loaves. So you can weigh it and be exact, and the recipe has weights for like what exactly a third would be, but I'm just gonna do it by sight. Now, an oil-based dough tends to be less sticky than a butter-based one, so this dough is really easy to handle. It doesn't stick so much. It's also very thick. Okay, so I have 3 portions, and I'm just gonna form each one into, really at this point it's more of a log shape because they spread out quite a bit as they bake. You're gonna pat each portion into this kind of loaf shape, measuring about 8 inches long and 3 inches wide. And this is just approximate. I would say the most important thing is actually that they're just all kind of similar. And again, that you're taking into account that they will spread out. We do a process of turning the loaves and coating in the sugar. So that does mean like trying to turn a hot, sort of fragile, like large, wide piece, which I think like takes a little bit of practice. My mom still kind of, on her one pan that she makes Mondel bread with, she uses her one, like the one special spatula to do it. And she insists that the reason for chilling is to prevent the loaves from breaking as you turn them. So you just want to be gentle, but it's not really that big of a deal. But just make sure that you pat them firmly so that you don't have like any areas where the dough is not sticking to itself. Here's another step in the recipe that doesn't make sense to me, but we do it because that's what we do. So we're going to score the loaves. I actually think that this might help with steam release, if I had to guess, of like why this is an important step. But we take a serrated knife, a bread knife, and you're going to cut sort of 1/2 inch deep score marks into the loaves crosswise. And you're going to space them about 3/4 of an inch apart because that is going to be the width of each cookie, of each slice. So I'm sort of eyeballing it, only really cutting maybe approximately 1/2 inch down into the dough, and only on the one side. Now that we've scored the loaves, the last thing before we put it in the oven is to sprinkle the tops with about 1/3 of the cinnamon sugar mixture. So you can eyeball that part as well. The idea is like full coverage, and it kind of bakes into the surface of the cookie, which is really nice. And it's a lot of cinnamon sugar. You really kind of like layer it on there. So my great-grandparents, where like we think this recipe originated, or that they brought over, only spoke Yiddish. And so my mom, like her grandparents, same, only spoke Yiddish. So every now and then she'll bust out with a Yiddish word where it's like, I've never heard that before. But like Yiddish is an amazing language for complaining. It's just like so many words for complaining in Yiddish. A particular word that both my mom and my mom uses and my grandma used a lot, which is verstunkene, which means like broken down or like rotten or no good. That's a great word. I just put it in and it's gonna go for 30 minutes. So the whole thing makes for 1 hour total, but 30 minutes on the first side. Then we do a flip, more cinnamon sugar. Then we do another flip after 15, cinnamon sugar. It finishes the bake. So we're looking at 1 hour total. The timer just went off. It's been 30 minutes on that first side. So I'm gonna pull it out and I'm gonna show you what I think is the best technique for flipping the loaves without breaking them. It smells very good and cinnamony in here. This has historically been the tricky part of this recipe. So you wanna use a nice, wide, broad, thin spatula. A fish spatula is a great tool for this. This is also a great tool. This is a bench scraper. It's just a big flat kind of thing you can use for lifting and turning. You can see the loaves spread out a little bit. So I'm gonna start just on one side. And all you wanna do is get a spatula underneath. And then I use one to turn and then one to kind of cushion and support. And you just go like that. It's not really that big of a deal. You just wanna be careful about it. So just like that. Okay. Then half of the remaining cinnamon sugar, which is 1/3 of the total. So you can see the rest of this will go on when I flip them after 15 minutes. So this goes back into the oven. Because it bakes for so long, you don't have to make them like biscotti where you have to slice them and then bake them again, but the cookie itself has that same texture of really crunchy, kind of crumbly in a good way. So back in at 350. So they're less fragile now because they've dried out a little bit. So final flip. So you end up inevitably like losing a little bit of cinnamon sugar on the baking sheet, but for the most part it adheres. So then the final sprinkle. Okay, these are basically almost done. Just another trip to the oven for 15 minutes and then we'll just rest them briefly before we slice. They're very toasty smelling. I'll let them rest for maybe 10 minutes and then I'll transfer them to the cutting board and then we slice.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Claire.
I just took the Mondel bread out of the oven. It looks great.
Good.
I made the dough last night. Have you ever made the dough the night before?
I usually try to stick pretty much to the 4 hours.
It held the marks more after it rested so long in the fridge. You know the score marks?
What do you mean it rested in the fridge? When did you rest it in the fridge?
No, I chilled it in the fridge overnight because I made the dough last night.
I see. Okay, I got it.
So I'm about to slice it, but I have a question. So this is Aunt Rose's Mondel bread, but like, what is the possible disagreement about? Maybe it's Aunt Tilly's recipe, or is it just everyone's recipe and everyone made it?
My mother told me that it was Aunt Rose's Mondel bread, and I, at one time, I don't think I do anymore, had the recipe in my mother's handwriting, and it was called Aunt Rose's Mondel bread. A couple weeks ago, when I was talking to my cousin Beverly, who is Aunt Tilly's daughter, she said to me, "It's not really Aunt Rose's Mondel bread. It was my mother's Mondel bread, and it should be called Aunt Tilly's Mondel."
Oh no.
So I said
What should
to her,
we do?
"Well, I don't really have any idea whose Mondel bread it is. My mother told me it was Aunt Rose's."
Yeah.
Maybe they developed it together and it was Aunt Rose and Aunt
Oh
Tilly's
no.
Mondel
Well, I
bread.
don't
I don't really have any idea.
I don't want to start any fights in the family.
Believe me, it won't be a fight.
All right, well, I'm going to slice them and see how they turned out, but so far so good. I told everyone about the one pan that you have for Mondel bread, otherwise it won't turn out. That looks like it was like an artifact from like an ancient civilization, that pan.
I think ancient civilization is called 45 years of making Mondel bread.
I'll send you a picture of how it turns out, and I'll call you later.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Love you.
All right, thanks, Mom. All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay, so these have cooled long enough. I'm going to transfer them to my cutting board. Actually, I do remember my mom doing this. She would kind of like scrape the baked on cinnamon sugar off and kind of sprinkle it on top. So time to slice. And actually, I can still use the guides that I made. So I'm just going to follow those score marks. I think using a serrated knife is important because you got to cut through the almonds. And you do want to do this while they're still hot. Don't let it cool completely because I think that they will crumble quite a bit as you try to slice. And you want the slices to stay intact. So it kind of needs to be cool enough to handle, but not so cold that they just fall apart. And then in our house, like the little end piece, which is the most done, but also has the most cinnamon sugar, that was kind of a prized cookie. It's a really nice profile. You see all the little pieces of almond, and I like when you cut through them and you get this really clean, flat surface. And so at this point, it's still hot, and it's a little bit cakey and soft, but as it cools, it will get completely crunchy all the way through, which is the texture you want. I think I got like 10 to 12 cookies per loaf. So all of a sudden you have 3 dozen cookies. So it's like a really high yield, and it's an hour of baking, but it's really hands off, and it is just an incredibly delicious cookie. It's sort of humble looking, it doesn't look like much, but is so satisfying to eat. And I love the kind of caked on cinnamon sugar, and it's a really fun experience to eat because the sugar kind of falls all over you, and it's perfect with a cup of coffee. So it's really like a anytime wonderful little snack and something that is very near and dear to my family. So I hope you give it a try. So thanks for watching, and like and subscribe.
How is the cookie?
Delicious. I really do love these, and I forget how good they are. It's so good with coffee or tea. Not too sweet, the right amount of crumbly, the right amount of crunchy. Much better than biscotti, I think.